Hello and welcome. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, but in the meantime, if you can enter the name of your institution in the chat, we would appreciate knowing who's with us.
Hello. I'm here.
Hello, Mary. We'll get started in a minute or two. I know we have a large crowd joining us. But in the meantime, we can enjoy some lovely photos of you in action.
Oh my goodness. Where did you find these? Oh my goodness.
We had to dig into the archives.
Oh dear. Oh my goodness.
Welcome everyone. We'll get started in a minute or two, but if you could please enter the name of your institution in the chat, we would greatly appreciate it. That way we'll know who's here sharing the love.
Oh my gosh, this is a walk down memory lane. Oh my goodness.
Hello everyone and welcome. We'll get started in another minute, but as you're entering, I love that one, Mary. As you're entering, please put the name of your institution in the chat so we know who's represented with us here today. In the meantime, enjoy a walk down memory lane with Mary.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited that you're with us again. If you have not entered the name of your institution, I invite you to do that at this time. I hope that you're all here for some reflections from a CCE Pioneer, a conversation with Mary Morrison. And while we're at it, I would like to acknowledge that a few of the remaining pioneers in the field are with us today as well. And that would be Lynn Blanchard from UNC, and we have David Malone from Duke with us, and Betsy Alden sends her regrets.
Oh, regrets?
Regrets,
I
yes.
have not seen Betsy in so long.
She's still on the battlefield, right? She's still a lecturer at Duke. But what you just saw are a couple of photos where I had to dig into the archives so that we could just show how committed Mary has been to this work over the years. There are photos of her back in our 2004 CSD SLD conference, SEAC PACE. And what you probably noticed in all of those photos is that she was either smiling or she was fully engaged. And I want to say that that is what I'm going to miss the most about Mary. Not just the fact that she was a consistent presence at our events, but that she was always bringing that energy and that passion into the space. And so our spaces aren't going to be the same without her. It really is a rare gift to be able to transform a space merely by your presence. But Mary has that gift. She's also a giving and open-hearted person, and she is always doing workshops and presentations and mentoring. And I know that there are folks on this call where she and her team have come and visited your campus to share best practices and ideas. I also want to personally say, I know that she's an incredible mother. Her son actually interned in our office one summer, and I found him to be one of the most mature, grounded, bright, talented, open-hearted young people I'd ever met, which I would have expected no less, because that is who Mary is and much more. So I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to celebrate Mary, even though her retirement is well-deserved. It really is a great loss to, I know Elon, of course, NC Campus Compact, our field, me, but we know the powerful impact that she's had on the work. And so her legacy will continue. And so I have a couple of questions that I'm going to ask, but I invite you, you can certainly make comments, but if you would also like to ask a question, because we'll have time at the end, just make sure that you put Q or question in front of it so we know the distinction between your comments and your questions. So Mary, Are
Yes.
you ready to get started?
I'm going to try to hold on without crying. I've got my box of tissues right here.
All right, so you and I are going to have a conversation, and then we'll open it up. Okay, so my first question I have for you is just the basic, what was your path? And we've got this, all of us have an interesting journey into this higher education, community, and civic engagement field. Keeping in mind, it may not have even been a field at that time, but tell us your journey. What was your journey?
Oh, well, thank you, Leslie, just for this opportunity to reflect. You were kind enough to send me some of your questions in advance. And I find that, this is a really important time of reflection for me. So yeah, what was my path and what was my journey? I frequently say to graduating seniors, my job was not invented when I graduated from college. So you don't ever know where you're going to wind up and where you're going to end up, because there was no such thing as a director of service learning when I graduated. But when I think about it, first of all, I have to give credit to my family, because Bob and Ann Fanning instilled in all of us that, we had a duty to make a commitment to the communities in which we lived, that it was the most important thing you can do was to be active and engaged and committed to your community and for making that a better place. And they demonstrated that every day in the way they lived their lives. And I tell students that I didn't realize that all families didn't do this, but in the Fanning household, dinner table, you had to come prepared. If you could read the newspaper, you had to read the newspaper, read Time magazine, read Newsweek, and watch the evening news. That was a family activity. And you had to come prepared to defend your point of view on the issues of the day. And that was from the time I can remember. And so that was just a value that was instilled. We always had someone at the dinner table that my mom was looking out for and taken care of in some way, and fully embraced at the family dinner table. And we never knew who was going to be there that night, but they too had to join in the conversation about the issues of the day. So I do have to say, that question, how was your day at school, was never asked, because we had bigger fish to fry. We had more important things to talk about than how my day at school was. So, and just an interesting family to grow up in, with a real commitment to community service. But in my professional life, I really owe a lot of my career to three great universities. The first university was North Carolina State University. I feel like they really launched my career with the Cooperative Extension Service. I was the 4-H agent in Orange County for 14 years. And they taught me whatever I've ever known about community development, community empowerment, working with volunteers, how nonprofits function, how government functions, how those two entities work together to get things done. And I am so grateful to North Carolina State University for giving me the opportunity to work in the Cooperative Extension Service, because it really laid the foundation for everything that I've done since. They did a beautiful job of helping me understand the power of neighborhoods and communities, and the kinds of great work that they can accomplish. So I'm very grateful to them for that. They also educated me. I received my master's degree in adult education. And, of course, that was all about experiential education, and Kolb's work around experiential education. So, I had a hard time kind of understanding this new term, service learning. I was like, I don't understand what's the difference between that and experiential education. That was kind of the early days. But then I had an opportunity to move to another great university, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And that is where I began really, first of all, I loved working with college students. I realized that is the population that I want to work with. I love the college student population. It's so exciting. I had the privilege and the honor of working with some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. I always say, you know, I've had the privilege of working with a Moorhead Scholar, a Rhodes Scholar, and they were all first-year students when they first walked in the door at the Apple Service Learning Program. I mean, those students were amazing. And I took this huge leap. When I first came to the UNC, the Apple Service Learning Program was a student organization that had enough money to hire a professional person to be their first full-time director. So my supervisor at UNC was a student by the name of Mike Diorio, who is now, you know, highly successful in banking and lives in England with his family. And I will say one of the best supervisors I've ever had. I mean, just smart and so interpersonally skilled. But the provost showed up at one of our advisory committee meetings, and it happened to be the day the students were presenting our strategic plan for the next 5 years. He just came unannounced and sat in on the meeting. And 2 days later, I got a phone call from the provost, and he said, you know, Mary, I think that you need to be a full-time employee for the university. And if you're open to that, we'll start getting that paperwork together. So yeah, I had given up all my state retirement to work for a student organization, and best decision I've ever made, because it really helped me find who I am. I finally identified myself as an educator. I found the population that I love, and I'm just so grateful. And those were the early days of service learning in North Carolina. Yeah, I was sorry Betsy Alden couldn't be here today, because I was thinking about, you know, she and I and Bob Sigmund, and sometimes this youngster from Elon called John Barnhill would show up at the diner in Durham. That was our campus compact first early meetings. We'd sit around the table. Our friends from NC State and from North Carolina Central would come, and we'd talk about this work and what it meant and what it was all about. So, and then I would say the next step for me was I'd taken a detour away from campus and not working with college students. And Elon offered me an opportunity to get back on campus working with college students. And I often think, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful, because I had taken a detour that I shouldn't have taken. Of course, you don't know that at the time. And got back on a campus working with college students. And it has just been a wonderful, wonderful place to do this work, because service and service learning are central to an Elon education. And so it's at the core of what Elon does, and experiential education is at the core of what they do. So it was a really nice way to bring it all together for me at the end of my career.
Okay, so I am going to switch up on you. Don't get nervous. I know that I gave you some questions, but that's prompting me to think about sort of your framing of this work. And my perception has been that it's always been student-led in your, and so I'm now realizing that probably goes back to your time with Apples and your recognition of, or you tell me, what is it about, what is it that draws you to this idea of student leadership?
So I often use the phrase students as colleagues. And really, I've always felt that way about working with anyone. So when I was working with 4-H and working with parents and other volunteers in the community, and also working with young people there, you know, I have always felt like, you know, everyone has a gift to give. Every person has knowledge and wisdom and something to share. And my thing is to give them an opportunity to shine. You know, I want every person to have that opportunity to shine. And so I try to work with my colleagues in that way, that, you know, it's with, not for. And that has just been part of the way that I've operated really before I even knew that was a phrase, with, not for. And what I love to see is, you know, I love to be that person that gives that someone else a chance, and, you know, gives them, let them shine, let them lead, let them be the leader of the event, or, you know, whatever. So students as colleagues is really just something I so believe in. And yes, perhaps I could have done it better, but what I found out is that volunteers often do it better than I did. If you give people a chance, they'll, you know, and you can't let your ego get in the way. That's the thing. You know, I have a gift, and you know what my gift is? I am not afraid of people who are a lot smarter than I am. I saw Eric Malin on the screen. I see David Malone on the screen. I see Lynn Blanchard on the screen. I have to tell you, I am not afraid to hang out with the smartest people in the room.
I love that, Mary. And I would like to add that I think of you as one of the smartest in the room also. So,
I just hang out with the smart people.
There you go. So as you look back over your 25 plus year career, particularly in higher education, service learning and community engagement, would love to know what sorts of changes and developments have you've seen over time, that particularly those that you think are positive, and then after that, we'll talk about what are some recommendations or things that you'd like to see us do better or lean into more or strengthen.
Yeah, I've thought a little bit about this, and some of us that have kind of, like, I believe I joined UNC in 1995, in January of 1995, and service learning was maybe 2 or 3 years old at that time. I mean, we were just kind of getting organized. Campus Compact had something called the Invisible College that was very mysterious. Do you remember that?
I know, and I've heard about it.
Yeah, and like only faculty could join, but then all the practitioners were like, I don't get it, that's antithetical to the work. But we really felt, genuinely, we felt that we were at the forefront of a movement. Like, we were there to change higher ed for good. And we really were committed to this vision of service learning and incorporating community engagement into the academic curriculum. And it was considered in 1995 a very radical idea. This was not broadly accepted. It was radical. And, you know, I was thinking about the National Society for Experiential Education. They were like the only game in town if you wanted to go to a conference. And so that's where I met, you know, John McKnight and, oh gosh, the folks, who am I trying to say? The folks from UCLA and Stanford, you know, they were sort of the early pioneers in some of this work. And, you know, we were just all going out to dinner afterwards, because usually you'd go to these conferences, you're the only person from your campus, because there was only, like, if you were lucky, you had one person from your campus that was doing anything related to service learning. And most people were like, you know, teaching full time, and they were the service learning person. I mean, I was fortunate, it was my full-time gig, and that was kind of unusual back in the day. So it was considered very radical pedagogy. And I remember when I first arrived at UNC, you know, there was a list, I was given a list of faculty that had expressed interest in service learning. And I remember I kind of cold called them, you know, oh, hi, you know, this is Mary Morrison. And, you know, I understand you might be interested in teaching your course as a service learning course. And I'm not joking, folks, they would slam the phone down on me. They were like not interested at all. I don't know how their name wound up on that list, but it was considered, it was just not mainstream. It was just not considered a legitimate pedagogy. And of course, now I look at all the people in the room here today. Um, you know, you all are doing this work and paving the way for all kinds of ways that we engage with the community. Service learning's been researched up one side and down the other because we had to fight hard to legitimize it. And, you know, so uh, I, I think that those of us who were kind of there when service learning was that kind of radical pedagogy at the beginning, you know, it's hard sometimes to hear people criticize it and put it, you know, say that it's not very deep or it doesn't talk about systems and, you know, it isn't challenging enough. And that's just not how I've ever felt about it. I have not felt that way. I've felt like we were talking about systems and we were talking about community partnerships in a really deep way. But I guess now it's got baggage, like so often that happens, you know, words get baggage. And so.
Yeah, great. So one of the biggest developments it sounds like that you've seen is just the fact that it is accepted, it's a field, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what sorts of recommendations or your thoughts do you have about where we can improve or grow or evolve or what you'd like to see?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great question to throw out to the group. I would love to hear what other people are thinking about. I know one of the things we're talking about at Elon, and people are tired of hearing me say it, but I'm broadening the tent. You know, service learning is so specific and it's so clearly defined, and yet there's a lot of ways that faculty and staff and students are engaging with the community that don't fit that definition, that very specific definition of service learning. And so I'm kind of into this inclusive mode where, you know, social entrepreneurship, design thinking, you know, community-based research, community-based learning that doesn't quite fit into the definition of service learning. I sat next to a fellow who was about my age at a conference a couple of years ago, and he said, Mary, if it's about the community, it is about us. Mm-hmm. You know, we can't just limit what we're willing to how we're willing to interact with the community. I mean, I think economic development is a frontier. You know, why aren't we working with small businesses to help them be successful? You know, those are, you know, if it's about the community, it is about us.
Great. Well, I only have one more question. So that is where we are now inviting the audience. Please put in the chat. We can certainly unmute you to get more clarity about what you'd like to ask, but we invite you to engage with us in this conversation. So as you retire, Mary, what gives you hope in the world, in higher education, the nation, whatever you'd like to tell us? What are you hopeful about?
So Leslie, are you able to put people back on the screen? I can see just a few people.
Yes, I will do that right now. I'll remove our spotlights so that we can see everybody. Are you seeing it?
I'm just seeing just a few people.
Okay, so up in the right-hand corner, there's a little thing that you hover over says view. And so it probably has defaulted now to speaker and you need to do gallery.
Okay. Do you see that? I can still only see like, okay, view. Maybe I'm just, oh, there we go. That's what I want. That's what I want.
Well done.
Oh, because I want to look at all these wonderful people who are on this call. So what
gives you hope?
Yeah. You give me hope. I'm looking around this room. This is what gives me hope. I know that I have so much respect for the people in this room. And I just, it has been such a privilege to work with you. I think this is one of the most generous fields you could ever be a part of. People share stuff with each other. You know, people listen, you know, support each other. This is what gives me hope. And and you know, so I'm so excited to see what happens next. I'm so excited to see where you go next, what you do, how you develop this work, how you impact young people. I am so optimistic about this next generation of students. I think they're beautiful. I think they're committed. I think they're excited. They want to do things. It is such an exciting generation of young people that are coming up. And what an opportunity to change this, to change things. I have a lot of hope. I don't know. I don't want to sound Pollyanna-ish, you know, but I do feel like I had a chance in January before COVID hit, January 2020. I was at a national meeting in California and I talked to Karen Musil. And I said, you know, Karen, I don't quite understand why service learning is kind of gotten a bad rap lately. I mean, I do and I don't, you know. And she said something so profound. She said, Mary, look around this room. There's like 250 people in this room. How do you think they got here? You know, service learning opened the door. And so I know there's tremendous work ahead of us. There's tremendous opportunity ahead of us. I'm so excited to see where all of you in this Zoom meeting, where you take it. Because, you know, in 1995, when we first kind of got started in this work, we didn't ever dream. There's like 44 people in this room. We never dreamed that it would be this successful and widespread and nationwide. We never dreamed this would happen. So I can't even imagine what you guys are going to do in the next 5, 10, 15 years. It's so exciting. And I'm so grateful for you. And I look around this room and I see all of you who've been my teachers and my colleagues and my friends, and this is a rich life. This is a beautiful life. I am so privileged to have had this beautiful life of working with you.
Well, Mary, it is our privilege to have shared this life with you and to have a piece of your light as part of our work in our lives as well. We would love to have questions from folks. I think we're small enough that if you just want to unmute, we can do that. I will share a few statements in the chat, Mary. I'll read them out loud.
Can we save the chat? Because when I realize,
yes,
will you save it for me? Because
I will save it.
I can't handle it right now.
Well, Joe Blauser from High Point says he was totally green to the world of service learning when he was hired to start a service learning office, and you welcomed him into this amazing world of North Carolina service learning and community engagement professionals. At every conference, I look first for your smile and welcoming grace. It will be hard to get back to in-person conferences and not have you there. So many of us owe so much to you, not just for pioneering the field, but for making it such a generous and welcoming community. Philip Motley says, we love you, Mary. Lynn Blanchard, glad to say you're using the word, see that you're using the word us, Mary. We expect to have you with us as we move forward. Hear, hear. Okay, John Dooley, whoever picked that as a time when the tears would start, you win the prize. Love you for that moment, Mary. 25 minutes, he says.
Oh, was I 25 minutes in? That's pretty good for me.
Whoever picked that as the time. Ian Reynolds, Mary, this is a question. Mary, you've always shared such profound lessons and learning moments for me in our short time working together. Can you share one profound moment that comes to mind prompted from a student during your work? Profound moment prompted by a student. Great question.
oh man, there are just so many. But I will choose the one from yesterday. I had a student that had to do a project to talk about herself, and why it was that she chose to become a journalist. And she did a 3-minute video about her life. And the beginning of the video was pictures of her. I don't know how she did this, but she had all these videos of her as a little kid talking. And it was cutting from thing to thing to thing. And it would say, stop talking. And then there'd be pictures of her talking. And it'd say, stop talking. Long story short, she shared that with me because she said, Mary, one day, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, when you were a little kid, you were quite yacky and talky, and people kept telling you to stop talking. And I often think back at that and I say, I've made my living talking. Talking is my life now. That's my profession. That's my life, is to talk. And she had remembered that and kind of built this video around her own people trying to silence her. And if you know me, I will not be silenced.
I love that. I love that. Well, David Malone had to step away, another one of our pioneers, but he says, you're a beautiful person. I need to go now and teach a class, but let's have a reunion at Elmo's. That was the name of the cafe.
Elmo's.
That was the name when NC Campus Compact started. For those who do not know, we now have these really fancy regional meetings on both sides of the state, and there's like 40 people in the room. And we used to go to cafes in this back room. You couldn't hear hardly, and squeeze ourselves in to do the work. So wonderful. He says, we love you. And Patty Clayton, also one of our folks who's been in the work and doing great work for many, many years. I can still feel your hugs, Mary. I so appreciate your unconditional support for our over 2 decades, as well as your enthusiasm and positivity. Your comments just now related to hope will carry me for days. Thank you. John has a question for you. You've seen many changes and evolutions in the work during your career. What do you think will be most different 10 or 15 years from now? To what future do you think we are evolving?
Oh dear. Boy, that's
10, 15 years from now. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm hoping is that the work is just more integrated and widespread throughout the university. That everybody sees, community engagement, service learning, community-based learning, that it's or civic engagement, it's all of our work. That it'll just be infused and, throughout, and almost taken for granted that, yeah, this is the work of higher education, is to prepare the next generation of active citizens. Of course, that's what we're going to do. Everybody has responsibility for that. It isn't just coming out of one center or one department or one discipline. We all have a responsibility to prepare students to be active citizens in whatever community where they live. And I think that's possible. I think that's possible. I will tell you the one thing that won't change, that relationships matter. That's the thing that will never change. Right. That if you're going to get anything done, it's built on relationship.
Absolutely. And you are a master relationship builder, Mary. I do have a question. It seems to me that one of the big changes in the field, and Elon has been, fully embraced it. So I'd be interested in seeing your journey towards that. I don't recall in the early years talk about the civic side of it, elections, activism, just some of those more like civic thing. So I'd be interested in your perspective of that, your journey to that. You obviously said you think that it's like you've accepted it in your language that that's part of our future, but there was a lot of resistance in the early days, my recollection, that that's not really what this is.
So John Dooley is laughing his head off right now because, first of all, if you don't know John Dooley, you need to get to know him, because he's one of the most incredible and transformational leaders I've ever had the privilege of working with. And that man has challenged me like no other. And he loves to tell the story about how he came to me and he said, Mary, we really need somebody to take the lead on voter registration and voter engagement and that kind of thing. And I said, oh, I don't know, John. I don't know if that's us. I don't know if that's us. He said, okay, we'll think about it. Brought it up again. I don't know, John. I don't know if civic engagement is really what we're about. Well, Mary, I think you really need to think about it. So I said, okay, Bob Frigo. Bob Frigo. John Dooley wants us to get involved in voter registration and civic engagement. And, that's not kind of what we've been doing, but, he seems to be like he's adamant. So Bob Frigo went home and he thought about it and came back the next day and he said, yeah, I'd like to provide some leadership for that part of the work in the office. And he did. And now I think, why did I ever resist that? I mean, can anybody explain to me why I ever resisted that? I do think it has something to do with, in the early days, we kind of were making lots of different differentiations between service learning and civic engagement. That wasn't really the work. But I don't know if anybody else has a story to tell, but thank God for John Dooley and Bob Frigo is all I'm going to say.
That's great. Yeah, I love that part of even your own personal evolution, and definitely it mirrors sort of the field in that way. So Kimmy from Duke says, Mary, I'm grateful for your impact on the service learning field in our state, especially as someone who worked with apples all 4 years of undergrad at UNC and now works with service learning at Duke. Where would you like to see the field go as you cheer us on in your retirement? Oh, she says, I see John just asked something similar. So maybe we've covered that ground, but if there's anything else you want to think about as you're dreaming of the future.
Well, I have to give a shout out to Bob Frigo. He really came in the door talking about the UN sustainability goals. And honestly, that really changed my thinking. We have a big poster on the wall with all the UN sustainability goals. This is so much bigger than any one of us, right? And to connect to, something that's global. And Philip Motley is on the phone. I don't know if he's still on the Zoom, but Philip Motley's all about local is global and global is local. And we're calling our group the Glocals. And so I do feel like, it's these kinds of issues that we're grappling with are universal, and we've just got to get out of our heads about this. We've got to be more inclusive. We've got to be more global in our thinking. We've got to, the whole world is struggling with these issues. We had a really interesting Zoom meeting. Philip Motley set it up with some folks in the UK, and they were talking about the terrible political divide in the UK over Brexit. And then our students were talking about the terrible political divide, between Republicans and Democrats. These are universal problems, and we've got to start thinking that way.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, the global perspective. Mary, we've got a lot of younger professionals on the call. So curious about what you think are the most valuable qualities that you see in someone who is doing this kind of work in the world, higher education, community, and civic engagement, which has a lot of different communities you're navigating, a lot of different relationships and hierarchies and all that good stuff. So what qualities do you think are the most valuable to navigate all that?
Well, first of all, I really want to thank my early career colleagues. Thank you. You have challenged me. You have taught me. You have opened my eyes to things I just haven't considered before. You're so much more evolved in your thinking around how communities work, and certainly the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, I've really learned so much from you as early career professionals. I mean, so many of you, this was the core of your graduate work that you did, and you've come out of your graduate programs and on fire for these bigger issues that are impacting our society. So I guess I want to hear your voice, and I want to ask you to have the courage to speak. And it does take courage. I know there's a risk. I mean, it's one thing for me, in my career at my age to, say it like it is and the way I see it, but I really want you I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you're thinking. I don't want you to, put your light under a bushel basket. I want your light to shine. The gift you have is the wisdom that you have, the life experience that you have. That's what's got to be shared. And so I just want you to have the courage to say it.
Great, thanks, Mary. Well, Dennis, at ECU, you're awesome, Mary. You've been a great mentor when it comes to our shared work in North Carolina. As a newcomer to the state and the compact 9 years ago, I've appreciated your wisdom and guidance as a higher ed leader. We've also shared some great work together through NASPA. Proud of you. And Lynn Blanchard says, yay, Apples, 30 years old and going strong, thanks to the foundation that you helped build, Mary. Beth Warner had to step away to teach a class, but she says, dear friend, thank you for who you are. And Eric, go ahead, Mary, were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, people have really encouraged me not to say this, but I feel like I must say it. This work is not done alone. We must do this work together. Anything that has happened has always been done with colleagues and coworkers and students and community partners. I have got to say, thank you so much for your kind words and your affirmations. And I'm really working hard to accept that and take that in. But the real success of this is really all of our success and all of the people who join us in this work. I just have to say that, even though I've been told not to say that anymore, but I have to say that.
Well, and we appreciate your generosity of spirit, but it does take the few and the proud and the bold and the courageous to step out and do the work first. And so I'm not going to let you slip and slide around that. You're a leader in the work, and we are all grateful for the seeds that you've planted that have bloomed over those years. And so Eric Malin from Duke, Mary, I treasured our work together all those years ago, building the Robertson Scholars Program. At our leadership meetings, I always hoped to sit next to you so your light could brighten my day, and it always did. Congratulations on a career well-lived and a retirement well-deserved. Absolutely. All right, is there anyone else who has a question or something they'd just like to pick Mary's brain about the world? And so Margaret at UNC, Mary, I still remember how excited the Apple student leaders were when they hired you so many years ago. They couldn't have done a better job. Wow. And then Brian Mathis from NC State. I agree with you, Mary, about the scope of the term service learning that feels too limiting. What do you suggest? Do we expand what the concept of service learning is to include more, or do we adopt a new term that is more expansive? Thoughts on what that might be?
Yeah, we just renamed our center the Kernodle Center for Civic Life. And that was a big, big decision for us. And we got very nervous. I say we, I say I got very nervous about using the term civic life. And actually, it's been really embraced by people. I haven't really, people have not pushed back on that. They've not, I was really, bracing myself for, a lot of criticism, and it didn't come. So I think everyone's looking for something, a more inclusive term, a better umbrella term. We came up, well, I'm not saying I came up, but people came up with the name Civic Life. And I don't know what, I don't know what the umbrella term is, but I do think that we have to be more inclusive.
Well, Bob Frigo has put on the table the Morrison civic-based learning. Has a nice ring to it. Evan Small has refined it and called it the Morrison model.
The Morrison
model. I can go along with that. And John has something in the chat for folks to read. So I hope that I encourage you all to take a look at that. I won't be reading that one.
I always make the joke, and because I can see some of, Evan and Bob are current colleagues, and there's Carrie, and, there's Allison Doherty down there. I have a gift, and it's my superpower, that I can get people to do a tremendous amount of work for little or no money. That is a gift, that a tremendous amount of work, Evan says. I don't know where it comes from, but people, they just, that's my gift.
Well, I think that goes back to my earlier question about what are some of the skills that you're going to need to do well in this work. And so any of us who want to be leaders are going to have to be able to get a lot out of folks with not much money. That's the one thing that is consistent about the work. And the fact that you've been able to do so much all these years is really wonderful.
And Leslie, I just want to take a minute and talk about the North Carolina Campus Compact, because, again, John Barnhill, Lisa Keene, Leslie Garvin. I mean, I am so proud of the North Carolina Compact. You guys have survived and thrived. And you talk about doing a lot of work from few people. That I really have to give a shout out to the North. This is North Carolina Campus Compact, again, is another example of what has far exceeded anything we ever dreamed it would be. From the diner at Elmo's to all of these conferences and regional meetings. And you have been instrumental in keeping the work strong in the state of North Carolina. So I want everybody to give Campus Compact a little round of applause too, because they've kept us all together all these years.
That's very kind, Mary. And it's a gift because we have so many amazing folks doing this work. All right, so I'm mindful that we have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone has any additional questions that you'd like to ask, I will share this chat with Mary. We did record it so that Mary can have it, and so that the field can have it in our archive and the historical stories that'll be told for years to come. And so that is a wonderful thing. Any final questions or anything anyone wants to share? And then we'll give Mary the last word. All right, I don't see anything in the chat, Mary. So if you have any final words of wisdom. John Dooley wants to know, any volunteering in service in your future? Actually, hey, the question is, what's next for you, Mary? Where do you see yourself headed?
So I've been told by a lot of people to, give myself a few months to chill out I don't think I can hold on that long. I think relevant to what this group might be interested in is I'd really like to continue to do deliberative dialogues. I really hope that I can, work a relationship out with maybe our local library or something, and to continue to, offer deliberative dialogues in the community. I've really enjoyed that work, and I do think it makes a difference. So I'm trying to think about how I might be able to continue that. In my early days, I did radio, and I interviewed people. It was a closer look with Mary Morrison, and I would do interviews with people for about 30 minutes. My favorite one was some guy raised prize-winning chickens in his backyard, and my classic question was, "How do you keep your chickens so white?" And he said, "I dip them in bluing." I mean, it was classic, a closer look with Mary Morrison. So my son tells me that the new thing is blogging. So I'm going to try to do interviews with people in my community to kind of highlight what they're doing, and to sort of remind myself, reconnect with my community. So I'm thinking about doing like some interviews, and we'll see how that goes. And of course, I will stay committed to voter registration and voting rights. That will continue to be a priority for me. So, I mean, I'll also hang out with my family and my kids, and my goal is to visit every one of the 62 national parks.
Nice. Well, Joe Blosser has put on the table an NCCC podcast on the horizon.
Podcast, that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Podcast, that's the word.
To be continued, to be continued. Okay, Mary, any final closing thoughts as we, again, thank you and honor you for who you are and what you mean to all of us and to this work?
Well, I just am so touched that you came. I thought maybe it'd be Leslie and I chatting here for a while. So it really means a lot that you came. And, I really meant what I said. I've just cherish our friendships and cherish the work that we've done together. And, I feel so privileged to have done this work, and I will continue the work after I retire. And I wish you the very best. And I also want to just say, if I could ever be helpful to you, I'll do what I can. I'd love to be helpful to you in whatever way would be good. So thank you so much. And I really am very touched and honored that you came. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. And Rebecca Todd Peters has made the suggestion that we all toast you. So let's hold up our fake glasses. I've actually got my tea here. And this is to 25 plus years of commitment and dedication to the work of higher education, community and civic engagement, civic life, whatever word we want to use. Thank you, Mary Morrison.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We love you, Mary.
Thank you.
Goodbye.